Okay, welcome back. World history. We're going to pick up from the Russian Revolution. And I told you we had needed to go back and discuss the Russian Revolution and the control of the czars, because that is what opens up the opportunity for this communist revolution. Okay. Now, communism had been written by Karl Marx, but nobody had actually put it into place. So it was new. It was to be determined. Right? It started as an economic theory, but will be put in by the Bolsheviks as both an economic and a political government. And when when the communists do this, when they institute this communism in their own way, their own brand of an economic and political government, what they essentially create is this new totalitarian dictatorship. Okay, it was brand new; nobody had done it before. um, so I mentioned that Lenin had led the Bolsheviks, led the revolution, and was only in power a couple years before he dies. Okay, he has a stroke and then he's basically on bed rest for a couple years, and he's still kind of leading the country, but he's bedridden. He can't get out of bed. At the same time, a nobody, he had been nobody during the revolution, but he had been uh, putting people into power. He had been consolidating his own power and putting supporters into different positions. His name was Joseph Jugasvili. He changes that to Joseph Stalin. Stalin in Russian means man of steel. Okay. And by 1924, when Lenin dies, he had been the secretary of the Communist Party. So he had kind of risen through the ranks. Okay. Ironically enough, Lenin realizes that Stalin is not the best person for the position. He says, Comrade Stalin has concentrated enormous power in his hands, and I am not sure that he always knows how to use that power with sufficient caution. Nonetheless, Stalin is a master at manipulating and keeping his power. He does away with Trotsky. He actually has him exiled. You'll see that in the video. And Stalin inserts himself right around Lenin's death and has complete power, has consolidated his power by 1928, 29. Okay. Um, once Stalin, uh, once Stalin takes power, he needs to keep his power. You're going to see in the video, power is everything to Stalin. Okay. And so, in order to keep his power, he develops what I just refer to them as the Big Five. Okay, and that's what we're going to focus on, the Big Five of totalitarianism. And Hitler did it, Mussolini did it, Kim Jong Un does it today. All right, any totalitarian dictator will use the Big Five, and the Big Five are here. I'll get to there in just a second. Okay, and we'll go over them. But a totalitarian government, here's the definition, is a government that takes total control, hence the root word, centralized state control over every aspect of public and private life. I mean, they made just about every decision for you other than what to eat for breakfast in the morning. Um, the worst thing that could happen to you in a totalitarian state was to be labeled as an enemy of the state, because then you would end up here in a labor camp in Siberia. Okay, so totalitarianism has been used by just about every dictator. It's kind of like you could open up the dictator's book for dummies, and you would see the big five. So here they are. These are all how they keep control. Okay, how do they keep their power. The first one you will find in a totalitarian dictatorship is fear and terror. All right. The people are constantly living in fear. That's how you keep control over them. There's spying. There's enforcement by the secret police. The secret police are policemen that are undercover. They're never wearing a uniform. You don't know who they are. They work outside of the law. Okay, these are the guys that can arrest you in the middle of the night and torture you. These are the guys that can exile you, send you to Siberia to a labor camp. They use intimidation. They use brutal force, and they use murder. You'll see all that in the video. The second thing that a Big Five uses to control is indoctrination. Indoctrination is the fancy word for brainwashing. They have to start them young. They want their people to be hearing the same message over and over and over and over from the time they were born. Okay, and this is how you get people to believe things that are otherwise untrue or anything that you just want them to believe. Um, Example, they controlled the education, they glorified the leader. Okay, everything was thank you, Stalin. Stalin gave us this, Stalin gave us that. They gained support for the party, and ultimately, what you get is loyalty. It's like when you see the video of Kim Jong Un's rallies and everybody's there praising him. Propaganda, which we learned in the last unit. Here's some propaganda. Again, glorifying. Propaganda goes hand in hand with indoctrination. It glorifies the leader. Propaganda is used to convince or persuade the public of whatever you wanted. That Stalin was the best. Stalin was the best leader. Stalin gave you food. Stalin did this. Stalin did that. The fourth of the Big Five is called censorship. That's where you control the news, the media, the publication, film, art, music. It means that you can show the people what you want them to see, and you can hide what you don't want them to see. You control everything. And when you can control everything, it makes it easier to indoctrinate. And then the fifth and final thing that every totalitarian leader will have is somebody to point the finger at. They will have some kind of scapegoat. They will have someone to persecute, somebody to point the finger at when things go wrong. Could be a religious group, it could be an ethnic group. For Hitler, he chose the Jews. Okay? For Stalin, he'll choose everybody. You'll notice in the video that his group of persecution will change with the times. Okay? But they have these enemies of the state so that they don't have to take the blame. They being the leader, Stalin, Hitler, whoever, Mussolini, but you can point the finger at another group, okay, and push off the blame. And then the thing I want to note at the end here is anybody who didn't agree, anybody who dissented, was imprisoned or killed. As a matter of fact, you were imprisoned or killed regardless. You'll see that in the video. Okay, this is a chart out of one of the books. You can take a look at it. It's just a pie chart of those big five. And here are some of the other totalitarian leaders I've already mentioned. You can take a look at those at your own leisure. They're posted. Before watching the video Stalin Man of Steel, you should review these notes as well. I mentioned several times that Russia had failed to industrialize and that they were behind. So Stalin makes it one of his goals to get the Soviet Union caught up and, if not, surpass the rest of the world. So he forces industrialization. Those are called the 5-year plans. Okay. He almost did it the first time, had to have a second 5-year plan. You can look at that. Okay, you need to know the word gulag. Gulag is a prison camp. So if you crossed Stalin or if you got ratted out, even if you didn't do anything wrong, you could end up in a gulag and you were basically slave labor. And then NKVD is an acronym for a big long word that basically means secret police. Okay? The NKVD, secret police. When they industrialized, when Stalin forces industrialization with the 5-year plans, then the thing you had to worry about was food. How are you going to feed all these people that are working? So he set up what were collective farms. Again, you'll see this in the video. In collective farms, basically they took what small amount of land the peasants actually had, they stole it, and they made these big, huge farms called collective farms, and the peasants were forced to work on those farms. Okay. Kulak is kind of an oxymoron. It's a wealthy peasant. By definition, peasants aren't wealthy, but if you were fortunate enough to own one cow, you'd be considered a kulak. And just to note, about 10 million people die as a result of Stalin's collectivization. 10 million people die at the farms. Stalin is responsible for more than 20 million deaths total. Okay, half of those are from starvation. Again, you'll see that in the video. And then last thing to be familiar with before watching the video is the Great Purge. A purge is a cleansing. It means to get rid of. Like you might do some spring cleaning and get rid of some things. In this case, it was human beings. Okay, and he'll have plenty of those to purge, various different purges throughout the video. All right, so to leave you before watching the video on the Big Five, Stalin Man of Steel, the Big Five, and taking notes, you need to have an understanding. The Big Five is fear and terror. People live in fear or terror of being arrested and sent to a labor camp. People are brainwashed. How do you brainwash? You use massive amounts of propaganda. You censor information so that you can control what people see, hear, read. And then lastly, you have to have somebody to point the finger at, some kind of scapegoat to deflect blame. All right, you guys. Thank you.